Hey guys, I'm sorry I haven't been uploading a lot, because I've actually been performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. What's the deal with slavery? I love it. And the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia? He is so hot, but not in a gay way. And what's the deal with airline food? Specifically the airline food on United Airlines Flight 175, which crash-landed on September 11, 2001. For those of you who aren't familiar, over the past week, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, perhaps better known for kidnapping people and chopping them up a little bit, has been hosting a comedy festival in Riyadh, featuring dozens of some of the most famous stand-up comedians currently performing. And the lineup is pretty deep, so like, yeah, you do have your sex pests like Louis C.K., who I imagine are just saying yes to any job that comes in front of them, and then you've got, you know, Dave Chapelle, who's got a ton of transphobic material, which I'm sure will just kill in Saudi Arabia, kill like a dissident journalist, and, you know, a fair amount of D-listers as well. There were a lot of people. I mean, maybe next year I'll get an invitation, provided I pretend I don't like the D and lose absolutely all sense of moral clarity over the next 9 months. But don't get me wrong, while there are a ton of comedians that you either haven't heard of or you don't respect, there are so many comedians who, prior to this, were broadly respected and well-liked, getting paid anywhere from $300,000 to $1.5 million to headline this event. Big names like Pete Davidson, Aziz Ansari, Kevin Hart, Sam Morril, and this one hurts me, Bill Burr. This cadre of stand-up comedy's favorite sons, and yes, they are all mostly sons because, believe it or not, this Saudi Arabian event is a bit of a sausage fest, have all been receiving a lot of severe public backlash. They've been mostly unrepentant in the face of it, though, with some like Chappelle choosing to pivot to right-wing talking points, others like Pete Davidson saying they're just in it for the money, and frustratingly, Bill Burr seems to be very resolute that there was nothing wrong with what he did and we're all just morons for being upset about it. And Kevin Hart is content to sidestep the issue entirely and just make fun little TikToks for the Saudi Arabian royal family.
Your Majesty, Your Highness, me, you, friends, you, here, next time, handshakes in person, no video, hugs, all the cool stuff. See that? That's how you know when I'm happy. All right? See you.
Isn't it charming? That man has literally ordered people to be murdered, and Kevin Hart just wants to give him a big ol' hug. I find all of this to be repugnant for many reasons that we'll get into, but I also want to note that to even appear in this festival, you had to accept a lengthy list of things provided to you by the Saudi government that your set was not allowed to include or joke about at all. And as I've alluded to, said government does not exactly have the best reputation because Saudi Arabia is currently listed as number 4 on the Global Slavery Index with almost 1 million people in modern-day slavery. But you just missed out on the podium position. Better luck next year. In any event, I doubt that any of those hundreds of thousands in bondage were in the crowd laughing alongside Hannibal Buress and Gabriel Iglesias. So today, I want to make fun of all the comedians who thought it fit to sanitize and whitewash one of the most regressive regimes on the planet so that they could, as other comedian David Cross put it, buy a 4th house. I'm going to be making some jokes at some of the comedians that I thought were my heroes, but as the saying goes, never meet your heroes. The same is true for me. You guys really shouldn't idolize me. I'm a flawed person, but my flaws manifest in different ways. Like, I won't take a $500,000 blood-stained check from the Saudi royal family, but I am a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I know, but we look really good this year. And also, I am only the second most evil Dodgers fan. My name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat. Please like, comment, and subscribe. These are all free ways to help out the channel, and they really, really matter to me, and I super duper appreciate it. Social media is there and in the description, but most importantly, heart back by popular demand. There are 3 main reasons to dislike the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Of course, some of the performers in that festival disagree, but we will be mocking and debunking that as the video goes on. Number 1, the Saudi Arabian government is comically evil. Number 2, by performing at this festival, you are forsaking what comedy actually is, because you are literally letting the government censor your act. And lastly, point number 3, most of the people performing at this event were already millionaires and didn't need this event and didn't need the money that they were given, didn't need the blood money, which kind of again spits in the face of points 1 and 2. Now I know what you're thinking. we're gonna really criticize Saudi Arabia. Is America that great? And I hear you, man. I hear you. Look, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders a third time if I could have. But in America, we have, for the most part, dealt with some of the most glaring human rights abuses that can take place in a modern-day country, because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is known chiefly for two things: being a brutal, repressive, theocratic, dictatorial regime, and having lots of oil. Although they're very much trying to get rid of this image, with their new young leader, Mohammed bin Salman, trying to reform both their image and their economy, both actually being fulfilled with things like the Riyadh Comedy Festival. By the way, just a gripe here, I think it's ridiculous that Mohammed bin Salman, at the age of 40, is allowed to be known as this young reformer. Meanwhile, every time that I go on Twitter, I get called Unk by a bunch of 20-year-olds because I'm I almost said 40, because I'm 24.
Why do you look 50 and you're 24?
What? What did you say?
One of the ways the Saudis are trying to modernize their economy is outlined in their plan called Vision 2030, which, SparkNote's version, involves using all of their oil money to bribe Westerners to perform in the arenas built by their hordes of slaves. And if you don't believe me, I found this one article when I was doing research for this video that I think outlines it pretty clear. It was an article written by Amnesty International, a human rights organization, simply titled 10 Ways That Saudi Arabia is Violating Human Rights. And as a pro tip, if your country is having listicles, a blog format usually reserved for BuzzFeed writing about 10 facts about Taylor Swift's new album, and instead of talking about cute life of a showgirl factoids, it's talking about tortures and murders, that's not good. Although, to give credit to the English teacher, to my knowledge, she hasn't performed for the Saudi royal family, so that's something. I mean, I don't know what would happen if she did. I don't really think Saudi Arabia has the best track record when it comes to women's rights. That's not AI, by the way. That's from a real movie that really existed and is really terrible. Anyway, let me give you a very brief summary of what was claimed in that article. We've got sexism enshrined into law, torture, a system of migrant workers, aka de facto slaves, crackdowns on the free press, no rights for queer people. Do you want me to keep going? Because there's not going to be a part where I say, oh, but they've got some really great Thai restaurants opening up, so this whole thing's kind of a wash. I mean, sure, they keep executing journalists, but did you see they've got a Starbucks right next to the Kaaba? Oh wait, that's not even a joke. That is just literally verbatim one of the arguments Bill Burr uses to defend his actions and his performance at the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
And I'm thinking, like, is that a Starbucks? Next to a Dunkin' Donuts, next to a Krispy Kreme, next to a Cheesecake Factory, next to a KFC, next to a Chili's? They got a fucking Chili's over here?
This is beyond parody and a level of stupidity I would normally expect from like a Travis Kelce type, someone who's just gotten a ton of CTE throughout their life.
Why? He's a tight end. He's like a glorified lineman.
So, I guess newsflash for any intrepid dictators who happen to watch my YouTube channel. I mean, former dictator of Gabon, Al Bongo, this one's for you, I know you're a fan. If your government builds a Chili's, congratulations. It can officially do no wrong. How can my regime be committing human rights violations when we've got baby back ribs? By the way, why did the goofiest motherfuckers end up getting to be dictators? Like, look at Al Bongo. His name's kind of funny too, if I'm being honest, but he should be selling real estate. He shouldn't be infringing on free and fair elections and silencing dissenters. It's just not what he should be doing. You may be thinking there's an air of hypocrisy to this, which there is to some extent, as Jimmy Kimmel realized when he was awkwardly confronting Aziz Ansari about his presence in the festival during his show.
The government over there is arresting people for peaceful protest. I mean, I know, yeah, we're doing horrible things over here, but they murdered a journalist. I mean... Yeah.
To this, I would say it's more of a reflection of how down bad America is during the second Trump administration, rather than a gleaming endorsement that Saudi Arabia is a pinnacle for human and civil rights. And there are a lot of things that America does wrong. I'm not denying that. I think the one that probably stands out as being the most similar to Saudi Arabia is how labor is treated in the criminal justice system. You are imprisoned and you are paid 12 cents an hour for work. That's not right. We're not justifying that. But at the bare minimum, in addition to many other civil rights and liberties that do exist in America, even if they may or may not be currently under attack, we live in a democracy, despite what this meme would have you believe. Because I believe we live in an America where just as easily this meme could be true and be what we experience. But there are other more basic things that I think separate Saudi Arabia from not just the US, but from most of the developed world. For instance, you won't face the death penalty for being gay in America. In the US, again to their credit, didn't just legalize the right for women to drive a car as recently as 2018.
Kabul's first female driver hits the road in the punch. That sucks. That sucks for women.
My point being that for as much as you can criticize America for being the Diet Coke variety of an autocratic country in certain ways, Saudi Arabia is the full sugar Mexican Coke real deal, which, fun fact, was recently banned in the United Kingdom, which is sort of immaterial to the claim of this video, but I just find it really funny that that's what the UK is doing right now. They're just banning soda. But anyways, back to the performers in Riyadh. Remember this Kevin Hart TikTok that I showed at the top of the video?
Get used to me, because you're stuck with me now.
That was directly posted on the account of Turki Al-Sheikh, head of the General Entertainment Authority, which is a name that just conjures up so many images of a free and fair society, but this man has an entire wing of a prison named after him because the only people in that section of the prison are people he's directly arrested for criticizing him.
I want to know what I can do to become a Saudi citizen.
Great people, great energy. All in all, 10 out of 10.
Kevin Hart is using his reputation as a big old goofball to sanitize the reputation of somebody who literally kidnaps and tortures people. And frankly, he's doing it in a way that I find very annoying.
See that? That's how you know when I'm happy. All right?
Real talk, can we use this as the final nail in the Kevin Hart coffin? I mean, name one good movie he's been in the last 10 years. I'll wait. I'll be waiting for a while. His whole gimmick is literally just being short and loud, the same routine that is copied by millions of third graders every year as they try to unsuccessfully make friends during recess. If they really wanted to make friends, they should try praising the Saudi royal family, which to my knowledge is not a current trend amongst the American youth, but give it 50 years after the Saudi royal family has bought the Yankees, and I'm sure it'll really catch on. All this being said, I do want to make a point very clear because some of the comedians really object to it. Criticism of the Saudi government is not the same thing as criticizing people who live in Saudi Arabia. This is a central disagreement that Bill Burr is either unwilling or unable to really understand about the reasons why people are frustrated with his decision to appear at this comedy festival.
You know, I don't know what's going to happen here. And like my whole fucking idea of Saudi Arabia is what I've seen like on the news. I literally think I'm going to fucking land, you know, and everybody's going to be screaming, "Death to America!" And they're going to have like fucking machetes and want to like chop my head off, right? Because this is what I've been fed about that part of the world, right?
If you genuinely believe that you, a wealthy, white, heterosexual American man, will face any sort of persecution traveling to Saudi Arabia as an invited guest, let alone getting beheaded, you are deeply delusional. And you're probably also a little bit racist. One of the things that Burr and others have talked about is that the average citizen of the average country probably doesn't bear a lot of animosity towards any given American tourist, or at the very least doesn't want to actively behead us, as apparently that's what Bill Burr thought he was getting into. This comes despite Donald Trump trying to change that perception by threatening World War III every few months, but the amazing race has taught me that the average person abroad views an American tourist as some sort of oddity or a rare goofball.
You have to do it with the gloves, Myrna, you have to. I can't hold it with the gloves. I will get mad cow disease. So heavy.
That being said, to actually address the root of Bill's anxiety, if he was to be beheaded, let me ask you, who would be doing the beheading? Because I think the odds of it being a random person brandishing a sword on the street are pretty low. No, it would be the state levying the punishment through their judicial system. Editing Pat here, coincidentally, the state of Saudi Arabia murders one person on average every 25 hours, but they're so magnanimous as to merely constrain it to people who are just, you know, happen to be critical of the government. How kind of them. And that's just not what Saudi Arabia is going to do, Bill. Why do you think they're paying you $500,000 or however much it cost you to sell your soul and your sense of morals? They are paying you specifically so you will say nice things about your experience, about the government, and about your time in Saudi Arabia.
It was a mind-blowing experience. Definitely top 3 experiences I've ever had.
Oh, and look, the check's cleared, and you did exactly what they asked. Congratulations, you've sanitized a regime that hates women, gays, and anyone who doesn't fuck with their preferred viewpoint on the succession of the prophets following the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Those are Shia Muslims. That joke was a reach, but they're predominantly Sunni in Saudi Arabia. Why am I digging myself? Not everyone did Model UN, Patrick. Stupid. Maybe not so coincidentally, Burr has been handling all of this public criticism very poorly, just canceling a show of a live taping of his podcast after a live taping with Conan for a different podcast a couple days ago went pretty poorly. According to an account from somebody who went to the live taping with Conan, Burr, quote, went on a bizarre rant about how he did such an incredible act of good by doing this festival, and that anyone upset at him is a moron who doesn't know where Saudi Arabia is on a map, and must think everyone there is a machete-wielding, people-beheading psychopath, because they've never actually been to the country like he now has. So are you familiar with the phrase, every accusation is a confession? Yeah, that phrase is mostly bullshit, but it actually does apply here. Burr is assigning these views to his critics because that is probably what he believed prior to coming to Saudi Arabia, which suggests that he probably is racist, or was raised in Boston, and I realize I've just repeated myself. Again, more to the point, the reason why your behavior is wrong, the reason why people are upset and should be upset, is not because everyone there is executing people. Because first of all, I don't think we think that, okay? Number one. And number two, it is distinctly not everyone doing the executions. It is the government doing the executions, that same government which just handed you hundreds of thousands of dollars. For instance, if we found out that the CEO of BetterHelp was operating a corrupt judicial system to execute critics of their service, I think we would all be very justified in getting angry at the YouTubers taking their sponsorship money. Besides, BetterHelp is much more likely to be killing users of their service by giving them hundreds of dollars in unexplained bills and giving these very depressed people substandard service. Did I just go there? Yeah, I just went there. That's an opinion though, you can't fucking sue me. Okay, have I convinced you that comedians should not be propping up a murderous dictatorial regime? Are you still watching despite the fact that I've probably been talking about human rights abuses for the last 10 minutes? I know that I don't have the same budget as John Oliver, but I hope I still have some of his sauce. Okay, we're good? All right, let's keep going. My second point, which is probably less important, but almost makes me even more angry, is that to even perform in this comedy festival, you had to accept a strict doctrine of censorship directly provided to you by the Saudi government. All of the comedians knew what they were allowed to and what they weren't allowed to say. And you know, fun fact, that sentence kind of reminds me of this article, Saudi Arabia, what women can and can't do in 2025. Okay, I promise I'm done bringing all the human rights abuses up. Kind of. I'm not really done. Comedian Atsuko Okatsuku revealed on Threads what you were allowed to say and what you weren't. Although if she was living in Saudi Arabia, we can add to the list of things she wasn't allowed to do, disobey your husband, because in Saudi Arabia, you are expected, once you're married, to obey your husband to a reasonable degree. That's in the laws. She noted that a lot of the you can't say anything anymore comedians are doing the festival, despite restrictions on talking about Saudi Arabia, the royal family of Saudi Arabia, or religion at all. Again, this proved to be no issue for comedians like Kevin Hart, who seemed more content to try to be the crown prince's bestie for the restie than to offer even a word of criticism for one of the most repressive countries on planet Earth.
Your Majesty, Your Highness, me, you, friends, you, here, next time, handshakes in person, no video, hugs, all the cool stuff. See that? That's how you know when I'm happy. All right? See you.
Kevin, can I get a hug too, or is it conditional on me giving you $500,000 and chopping up some journalists first? Just asking. This is just so absurd. A family full of reactionary monarchists has paid dozens of the most high-profile stand-up comedians, the truth tellers, for their silence and complicity. But, well, in the case of Tim Dillon, they didn't really do that good a job, because despite offering to pay him over $300,000, something befell him that I can only describe as stupidity, but in a really funny way, because they were not too keen on some of his comments that he made and fired him. I'll let him explain it.
They heard what you said about them having slaves. I said I was defending them for having slaves. I literally said slaves are probably hard workers and, for the most part, agreeable.
Tim, don't be so silly. They don't want you to justify the whole slavery thing. They want you to pretend that it doesn't exist. I'll give him a modicum of credit for being willing to joke about stuff like this, even if he did later justify his hypothetical appearance at the comedy festival, but he's really living up to how he was described on the official Riyadh Comedy Festival page as having unapologetic, no-filter comedy. Evidently, though, Saudi Arabia is not really interested in unapologetic, no-filter comedy when their kingdom is the butt of the joke. They were kind of more looking for people like Aziz Ansari to do a funny little voice and not really grapple with the ethical implications of performing comedy in a dictatorship.
And they're like, this is sad, it's okay.
I want to ask you about this comedy festival over in Saudi Arabia.
There's a growing perspective in comedy, essentially telling comedians to shut up and dribble, to borrow a metaphor from athletics, essentially saying comedians should not weigh in on politics because most of us are stupid. That's fair, and it's honestly correct, but I think there should be an exception for those of us like me who have actually read a book in the last 12 months. And to further my argument, I actually include a works referenced in the description of my YouTube videos. Somewhere, someway, my 8th grade English teacher is nodding approvingly. But to set partisan Democratic Republican politics aside for a second, the purpose of comedy was, and in my opinion will always be, to speak truth to power. Society can be a dark place, it can be a sucky place, and it can be hard to just wake up in the morning sometimes. Comedy is supposed to take these facts and punch up, to make jokes at the expense of those of us who have influence when the rest of us comparatively have none. What comedy shouldn't be, in my opinion, is taking $1 million check to tap dance in front of a bunch of royals and essentially sanitize a modern day dictatorship with an underclass of fucking slaves. Dave Chapelle, though, disagrees with me, and he says because of cancel culture, it's actually easier to perform comedy in Saudi Arabia than it is in America. You dense motherfucker. You have tens of millions of dollars. You could suddenly become a deaf mute tomorrow, and you would have enough wealth for 100 lifetimes.
You can get up now! He can't hear you.
Dave Chapelle, you cannot be cancelled, unless, when you were at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, you happened to make a joke calling the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia an unk, and then you would have, of course, been deported to a desert prison. Which brings me to the last point. Most of the people performing in the Riyadh Comedy Festival were already comically wealthy. People like Bill Burr, Aziz Ansari, Gabriel Iglesias, Kevin Hart, Jimmy Carr, they're all millionaires. Is your morality really worth that little? Because it seems like it is. Even someone like Pete Davidson, who is not as wealthy as those people I just listed, but even he was able to overlook the unethical behavior from the kingdom, provided they sign the checks.
I just, I get the routing and then I see the number and I go, I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, far be it from me to tell Pete Davidson what he should or should not do, because I'm not a Kim Kardashian-esque female celebrity who's enamored with his assuredly giant penis, but the Saudi Arabian government and people who have had influence in that country were pretty involved in a certain disaster that took place on September 11th. I think we all know what I'm talking about. That's right. The Kirksay tragedy, where 14 Estonian soldiers of the Baltic Battalion drowned or died of hypothermia during a training exercise in the Kirksay Strait in 1997. Obviously, the more famous one, where unfortunately is where Pete Davidson's father died, and while the Saudi state government probably wasn't directly dictating the course of what happened on September 11th, there are a lot of question marks and a lot of very suspicious connections to those who are both directly in the government and intimately associated with it. I'm trying to address this subject in a bit of a sensitive way. There's no shortage of people on the internet who are just being very aggressive in clowning him for his actions.
Yeah, you don't 9/11 your friends, bro.
Don't 9/11 your friends.
You don't. That's up.
And go over and go, hey guys, you guys want to talk about...
You know, to each their own, I guess. In any event, as I mentioned at the start of the video, comedian David Cross put it quite well in an excerpt he wrote about the entire situation, and I'll read you a very brief snippet of it now. I am disgusted and deeply disappointed in this whole gross thing, that people I admire with unarguable talent would condone this totalitarian fiefdom for, what? A fourth house? A boat? More sneakers? And I understand his rage, not just as someone who's waiting on house number 1 and probably still be for a while, but as somebody who thinks of himself as, like, a creative person with some semblance of morals. Would I do an advertisement for a sex toy company? Yes, and I have. But would I do an advertisement for a country that tortures and murders dissidents? No, because the only torture that I condone is consensual and sensual and not for me at all, but I don't judge. I think it's incredibly messed up that you can wash your hands and do a set of stand-up comedy in a country that in 2022 executed 3 people for being gay and in 2019 executed 5 more for the crime of doing the same thing. And moreover, it irks me to see a lot of comedians who love to complain about cancel culture, I can't say anything anymore. Literally allowing a foreign government to directly impact what they are able to say during their sets. They're cool with the censorship as long as the check's clear. Frankly, the only comedian who's emerging from the Riyadh Comedy Festival with even a shred of dignity left is Jessica Curson, who is reportedly donating her entire fee to a human rights organization that has yet to be specified. But really, Jessica, if you had to, quote, request a guarantee that you could be openly out as a lesbian on stage and perform gay material, you are not in an environment where you are able to freely practice comedy. You just weren't. Or you were performing a show for my ex-boyfriend's parents. Either way, you should have stayed home. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe. These are all free ways to help the channel, and I super duper appreciate it. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. And as always, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat, and I'll see you for the next one.